My name is Joseph of Arimathea. I'm a religious leader of the Jewish people and a member of the Sanhedrin. I come from a wealthy family that has long lived and died in the village of Arimathea, just north of Jerusalem. And through family connections, years ago, I secured a coveted seat on the Sanhedrin. Though, truth to be told, I was never cut from the same cloth as my other colleagues. Well, when I first heard Jesus preach, his words created a thirst in me for a life much bigger than the Sanhedrin's narrow focus on purity laws and public piety. Yuck. A year later, when I found out more about Jesus, the nature of his kingdom, and the cost of my commitment to him, well, I decided to secretly become his disciple. Well, on Good Friday, I watched Jesus' death from a safe distance. For friends, it was dangerous to be seen as an ally of this supposed blasphemer. The women who were at the bottom of his cross, who stayed to the end, they were transformed by his love, and they refused to abandon Jesus even in this darkest of hours. Well, after Jesus had breathed his last, and the earthquake had stopped and the ground underneath me was no longer shaking, I turned and prepared to head back towards the city gate. No one wants to stay around and see the Romans break the legs of those victims not yet dead and then watch them wrench those corpses right off the cross. No, I wouldn't stay to watch that. I leaned down, adjusted the straps of my sandals, and prepared to walk away. But as I stood back up, my eyes coincidentally fell again on that small group of women there at Jesus' feet. His mother was slowly rising from her kneeling position, and as she wiped her eyes, another woman next to her put her arm around her shoulders, and they looked up in silence, in reverence, it seemed, at Jesus' body. Well, instead of walking back into Jerusalem, I ended up walking right back up to that cross and those ladies, and I said, "Hey, is there anything I can do to help?" Well, they turned, and I saw that their tears had left pale streaks on their dusty cheeks. The younger woman, her eyes were bloodshot, and she cleared her throat before she spoke. She said, "Yes, there is a way you could help us." It turned out that these women wanted to perform one last service for their beloved master, to bathe and anoint his body for burial. Well, according to our Jewish law, we can't leave a dead body outside overnight. That would be unclean. Neither can we do any work on the Sabbath. That would break the law. So to be able to come back and fulfill their duty, these women needed to know where Jesus' body would be taken. Well, neither of us had any idea of what the Romans or the Jews would do with Jesus' corpse. The teacher from Galilee, it seemed, was completely abandoned. Well, suddenly my words came out of my mouth. Well, I can do more than find out where he'll be buried. I can provide a place where his body can rest with honor. I will send word once all is settled. The women didn't understand my plan, but they nodded their heads and trusted me and were obviously grateful. Well, with sundown approaching fast, I couldn't waste a minute. I hurried toward the city, making straight for Pontius Pilate's dwelling. And thanks to my position on the Sanhedrin, Pilate agreed to see me immediately. I knew that I might be seen as guilty by associating myself with this Jesus just crucified, but I was resolved to stand firm, and I asked Pilate for permission to bury Jesus' body in my own tomb. Well, yes, of course, Pilate said, nodding. No doubt he was only too happy to grant my request and just be finally done with this whole thorny problem of Jesus of Nazareth. Well, I thanked him, and I headed back to my lodgings to ask my servants for help. So I got back from the hill of execution and gathered my servants, and we carried his carefully wrapped body to my tomb and laid it inside. And we together then rolled the heavy stone in its groove down the incline and over the entrance. His burial was finished. It was only later that the early church, of which I was a part, we realized that by this simple action, I had fulfilled one of Isaiah's overlooked prophecies. In Isaiah 53, he was with a rich man in his death. I just add this now to my list as one more reason I will forever follow Jesus. It's one more piece of evidence that the Master's death, even his burial, was no accident.